Indie dev based in Austin, Texas, and I've been making games since 2015. I've published 7 games through my studio, Team Dog Pit, and I'm working on an 8th right now. 4 of those games have won awards, and all but one of those games involved voiceover. I have a theater background, and I've trained in multiple kinds of acting, and I've been mentored in script writing and directing. I recently released a kinetic novel adaptation of The Cherry Orchard, a classic play that's considered prestigious in drama nerd circles. But unlike all the other video games I've directed to date, I decided to make the recording process as stage-like as possible, and in this talk, I'm going to give you some tips on how you can do that too. I chose to produce this game this way for a very important reason, and that reason is authenticity to the moment. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Now, everything I'm about to say comes from the way I was taught, and there are other opinions. I've trained in some of them, but this is the methodology I feel the most at home with. If you get on stage and you try to act sad, or happy, or angry, it's going to be fake, and everybody's going to know it's fake. It's fake because in real life, you don't act sad or happy or angry. Things happen and you respond. And you know very well what it's like to be sad or happy or angry, and what can make you feel that way. So when you're acting, if something happens to your character, you can draw from your own life experience to find a real response. And that real response will look to someone on the outside like you're sad or happy or angry. And as long as the response you come up with makes sense based on what happened right before that, then it's going to be real. And other people are going to feel that it's real. This is an idea called authenticity to the moment. You can have authenticity to the moment when acting by yourself, but you have to work twice as hard because you have to imagine everything you're reacting to while also drawing on your own instincts to come up with a response. The purpose of recording lines in a group then is to allow the greatest possible authenticity to the moment. The Cherry Orchard is a 4-act play by Anton Chekhov that premiered in 1904. It's about an old money aristocrat named Lubov who owns an estate with a large cherry orchard. Lubov is very kind but also completely out of touch with reality and hopeless with money. When the story begins, she's in enormous debt and the estate, including her beloved cherry orchard, is slated to be put up for auction in order to pay her creditors. She has many opportunities to prevent the sale of her estate but doesn't act on any of them. And in the end, her estate is sold and she's forced to leave it and the cherry orchard behind. The most important part of storytelling is the theme. The theme is what the story says about how the world works. It's an argument of cause and effect. If X, then Y. While themes start with the writer, the director is the one with the final say on what themes are communicated and how. Every decision the director makes should be for the purpose of reinforcing the themes. In other words, before doing anything else, you need to decide what it is you're trying to say. It doesn't have to be a message about morality. It can be something like being good at fighting leads to victory, but you need to have a theme so that you know where you're going. Otherwise, you won't know if you've gotten there. In the end of The Cherry Orchard, Lubov loses her cherry orchard. That's the effect. So that, combined with the cause, is going to form the backbone of the theme. We have to ask, why doesn't Lubov do anything to avert the loss of her orchard? One thing that makes The Cherry Orchard both challenging to direct but also timelessly dynamic is that the characters don't say how they feel or explain why they do anything, which means that without changing any of the words, you can make the events of the play unfold for pretty much any reason you want. I decided that Lubov didn't take advantage of the opportunities presented to her because that would require her to acknowledge that things aren't the way they used to be, and she would rather live in a lie than confront the past. With that in mind, the main theme I picked for my production of The Cherry Orchard was being unable to let go of what hurt in the past leads to being hurt in the present. The director's role is to look at the big picture and make sure every scene points towards the theme. And the actor's role is to focus on a single character and make sure that that character's actions serve that theme. When directing one-on-one, which is most typical in video games, you have the ability to manage the delivery of each line in isolation, which allows you, the director, to have a huge amount of control over the result. If you want, you can more or less act every line yourself by proxy and get a performance limited only by your imagination and the talent's tolerance for micromanagement. You will not be able to craft every individual line in a group session. You are giving up some degree of control in exchange for greater authenticity to the moment. You need to get the entire cast on the same page with regards to the theme you're trying to communicate. For the Cherry Orchard, I got the cast together for a full read-through. Afterward, I discussed with each cast member how we would work together to make their character fit into the larger picture of the central argument of the story, that is to say, the theme. We've met Lubov, the story's protagonist, and my adaptation has 3 additional characters. Varya, Lubov's daughter. She's shackled by her obligations to manage the household because her mother is incapable of acting responsibly. Hermes Lupakin, who used to be a peasant but somehow got rich in the last 5 years. It's never explained how. He's deeply insecure about how he used to be poor. He's the archetypal 20th century workaholic to the point that I speculate that most workaholic stock characters are directly or indirectly based on him. He's been in a relationship with Varya for years, but is no longer emotionally present due to aforementioned workaholism. Peter Trofimov, friend of the family. Non-aristocrat, middle class, 27, still going to college. His dad pays. And he shows no sign of graduating anytime soon. Basically, textbook Arrested Development, man-child. In the case of Varya, before I even cast the show, I knew I was going to include a theme not directly supported by the text, which was definitely going to require full buy-in from Ash, the actress I cast to play her. Varya is the protagonist of a subplot that deals with her relationship with Lupakin. They've been going out for years. Everyone thinks it's long past time for them to get married, and characters urge Varya to just ask Lupakin to propose to her, but she seems kind of ambivalent about it. In the end, since Varya no longer has a household to manage and she's unmarried, she's forced to take a job as a housekeeper in a different aristocratic household, so her days as an aristocrat are over. Lupakin has one last chance to propose to her, but he doesn't. It's implied she's a bit old to be unmarried, so this was basically her last chance, and now she's gonna die alone, probably? It's a tragic end for a character who spent her whole life having to deprioritize her own wants in order to clean up her mother's mistakes. It's not explicitly stated why she doesn't tell him to propose to her, so that's left in the hands of the director, but traditionally it's depicted as fear, excessive propriety, that kind of thing. But I decided I wanted to frame things so that it wasn't that she was a hapless victim of circumstance, but that she chose to end their relationship. Thus, the theme of her subplot would support the main theme by proving the inverse.
It's so clear that in order to begin to live in the present, we must first confront the past, and that can only be done with hard, uninterrupted work.
For this to work, her choice to end the relationship would be proof that she'd internalized this theme. Therefore, to really land, it would need to come from a dilemma at the climax of an arc of character growth. So without changing the words, she needs to be seen to start questioning her place in life and be dissatisfied with continuing the way things had always been. Additionally, for this to be a true dilemma, the choice can't be easy. A lot of productions make Lupakin a huge jerk, but if he was, then it wouldn't really be a dilemma. Because if your choices are freedom and not being with a jerk, versus being trapped and with a jerk, then the first choice has no downsides. So it's not believable that Varya would really have an internal conflict about it. But what if Lupakin was truly a very kind and gentle person, but Varya could never be free while married to him? That's a real bind. Also, for Varya to reject marriage with Lupakin, it has to be an actual option on the table. Lupakin has to be serious about wanting to marry her. So this would clearly inform how Lupakin is depicted, and therefore required coordinating with Matt, the actor cast as Lupakin.
I can't seem to find it.
What are you looking for?
I packed it myself and I don't remember.
Barbara Mikhailovna. Will you be staying in town?
No. I'm going to my great aunt's. She offered me a job. As a housekeeper, something.
She's about 50 miles out, right? So, life in this house is finished now?
Where is it? Maybe I put it in the trunk? Yes. There will be no more life in this house.
I'm off to Kharkov. Same train, actually. I have a lot of business.
Well, well.
This time last year, it was already snowing. Remember that? Now it's sunny. Cold, though. There's 3 degrees of frost.
I didn't look. Our thermometer's broken.
Hey, Hermes! Mr. Hermes!
Be right there.
Divide the script into French scenes, that is, scenes separated by a character's entrance or exit, and plan your sessions around these scenes so that you have the actors who share French scenes in session at the same time. This will mean that you'll be recording lines in some cases out of order, which makes it all the more important that you have a clear idea of what you want to accomplish with each scene. You're going to have to put a lot of trust in your actors. However, that doesn't mean you just bring them in and let them have at it. You aren't going to be acting out the scene, but you're the one with the clearest picture of the story as a cohesive whole, so you need to be prepared to get everyone to aim at the same target. You have to have the attitude that every line is said for a reason, and if there isn't one immediately apparent, you need to come up with one. In each scene, you need to have an idea of what each character is literally doing and what their essential action is. By essential action, I mean what, on the most fundamental level, is the character trying to do. It has to be an action with a pass or fail state, and the character can only know if they've passed or failed by looking at the other character. So, find my wallet isn't an essential action because it can be done without looking at another character. And just vibe with my bro isn't an essential action because it doesn't have a real pass or fail state and it could go on basically forever. But something like pressure a friend into revealing a secret, that's an essential action. So the other character starts like coming around to the idea, talking, then this action is getting closer to succeeding. But if the other character starts clamming up or becoming offended, walking away, then the action is getting closer to failing. When an action is passed or failed, then a character either gets new action, they drop out of the conversation or exit the scene, or the scene ends. So the scene should be a series of actions that pass or fail based on the behavior of each character's scene partner.
To own human beings has affected every one of you. Those who lived before and those who live now. You don't notice that you are living off the labours of others. In fact, the very people you won't let in your front door.
Now, in thinking of the reason why he's saying this, he's attempting to persuade. So I think I'd like to hear a take with that in mind of to not express moral superiority, but to, I guess you could think of it as an action of to convince a close friend that they're making a bad decision, or to get a family member to understand that they're hurting people, I think would be good essential actions for this.
To own human beings has affected every one of you, those who lived before and those who live now. You don't notice that you are living off the labours of others. In fact, the very people you won't let in your front door.
In addition to literally directing, your job as the director is to set the tone of the session. You need to make sure everyone feels like this is a safe place to take risks. And this is even more important in a group session than on one-on-one because the talent has to not only feel comfortable taking risks in front of you, they have to feel comfortable taking risks in front of another professional. It's also very important that you maintain high morale through the session. If anyone mentally checks out, then you're in deep trouble. As much as you can, as much as it makes sense, rather than talking about what you want, what you think is best, phrase things like, what if we, or let's try. So when your language with the actors is shared, you're putting yourself on the same team. My approach, whether directing groups or individuals, is to let the actor or actors do the initial take with no direction at all. This lets them do what they think is best without being swayed by your own interpretation, and often they'll come up with something you didn't consider that's actually even better than what you had in mind. And if they don't deliver the line the way you heard it in your head, it's tempting to try to nudge them into place, but before you do, you need to consider, 1, was it an authentic reaction to what the other character just did? And 2, did it create a sufficient motive for what the other character does next? So it did those 2 things. It actually hit all your requirements. So if it sounded authentic to the moment, then actually it's fine and you should chill and trust the talent. So what do you do when the line deliveries aren't meeting those requirements? Because the reads are being done in sections and not line by line, you want to avoid giving a lot of specific direction because that'll just lead to more stuff the actor has to juggle in their head and reduce their ability to react authentically. You might feel anxious because it takes so long to get through a single read, but I found that on average with group sessions, fewer takes are required overall. So, troubleshooting. Problem. The line read isn't going in the right direction. First, come to an agreement on what their character wants from the other character and what their strategy is for getting what they want. It can be helpful to find a way to relate the situation to the actor if you can with the phrase, "it's as if," and then the essential action.
I'm afraid. I don't like serious faces. I don't like serious conversations. Let's be quiet sooner.
I'd like to hear a take where, I'd like to hear it almost as if he's saying that because everybody around is there, he's not receiving any chatter back. Nobody is speaking back to him. So there's sort of a pause there.
Mhm.
I would be interested in hearing a take as that as a response to almost a, the sort of pressure one feels to speak when they've just said something
To fill the gap.
like, yes, they've like spoken from the heart and nobody's saying anything back. And so there's that sort of like,
I'm afraid. I don't like serious faces. I don't like serious conversations. Let's be quiet sooner.
Problem. You give direction and the actor says, "I'm already doing that." Just like, okay, but I wouldn't have told you if I knew you were doing that, so clearly you're not doing that enough. But you can't say
Believe me,
because
Varia.
that would hurt morale.
Believe me.
But it's really not an issue of like, are they or are they not doing it? It's clearly the choices they're making are not big enough. So another technique would be to say, let's think about what's at stake. Like, what does this character think they're at risk of losing? What's like a different strategy they could take that would get them even more directly to their goal? These are all kind of like open-ended questions, but since you're not like literally telling them what to do, it can help keep them from getting caught up in their own head and reducing the authenticity of their performance. If you find yourself focusing on one actor way more than the other, it can be a better idea to schedule a one-on-one session with them later, as you under no circumstances want them to end up feeling massively embarrassed in front of another professional, or they could end up with hard feelings for you and your project, and as an indie, you live and die by your reputation and you really can't afford to be making enemies. Also, under no circumstances must you allow the other actor to jump in and direct. It doesn't matter if they're more experienced at directing than you, it's never appropriate for an actor to jump into the director's chair uninvited. So is directing in groups right for your project? It does have some caveats that you need to consider. First, it's a lot more work. For you and the actors, mostly you, you have to give up your minute line-by-line control, which means casting is more important than ever, because in a lot of cases, when you're going line by line, you can kind of goose an inexperienced actor up into sounding really experienced, but you can't do that here. And if you're paying by the hour, it is at a minimum twice as expensive because you've got 2 actors in and they're getting half as much done. It's much harder to organize. It takes a lot longer to get everything recorded. It requires more sessions. And as you know, it is very difficult to get a bunch of adults to agree to show up anywhere at the same time. It's basically like herding cats. So, with that in mind, is it worth it? Well, in my case for this project, The Cherry Orchard, I think that the results and the reviews speak for themselves.
Okay, I have to get going. I'll be back in 3 weeks. Au revoir, Varia. I don't want to go away. Oh, wait, say the word and I'll raise a loan of 50,000 rubles immediately, okay? Just think about it.
Just go already.
I'm going. Whoosh. Ah, yeah, going. Bye. I'm okay. Don't know why he tripped.
All right, questions.
Yeah, anybody got questions for me?
Okay, let's see what the chats have. Everyone's been just kind of like chatting up with Storm, and I think they got distracted.
Oh, okay. Oh, can everybody hear me? I think I unmuted myself. Okay. How do you learn to direct voice actors without necessarily having a theater background? Oh, I don't understand Zoom, so hopefully I'm doing this right. But I guess I'll answer this question. Practice. The best way to learn how to direct is to direct. So you should throw together a project with voice actors and direct it. That's the best way to learn. And that's not hard, but that has a whole yeah, casting a project is probably a talk of itself. So see me after class about that one. Ash asks in Discord, how would you compare the experience of the one-on-one sessions versus the live sessions in a general sense as a director? I think they both like have the stress points and the non-stress points. I think one-on-one sessions are definitely a lot more, I guess, intimate in a way, especially if you're covering difficult material. But I don't know. I'm like thinking about that because it's such a philosophical question. I think generally I find the group sessions slightly more stressful, although they're more fun, because in the group sessions, you as the director have less control overall over the proceedings. And so, you do just have to accept that you don't control everything that happens. I don't know if that was a good answer to the question. Oh, yeah. Moxie says, hire voice directors always. Yes. And you can hire Moxie or Ash or me. I could direct your project. You could hire me, hire somebody. Have we more questions? Yes. You should have a group directed session. That sounds like a disaster, but directing groups. Yeah.
Everyone's just agreeing how much of a disaster that would be. Okay.
Question. How do you go about recording a live session with various remote actors, what with their different setups? Everybody cast must be able to record remotely. And that's sort of like the filter for that is the audition. Because if they can't audition remotely, then they can't record remotely. So the audition is sort of your chance not only to see if they have like the acting chops, but to see if their recording setup is proper. Because every time I have an audition, every time I have a casting call, and I do closed casting calls, so I'm not letting in, the rabble. I say that affectionately, but I have to eliminate some people because their audio quality is not broadcast quality. So folks have various setups, and that your home recording setup is a subject for another talk that could last 20 plus minutes. But they've all got gear, and they record on their end because I don't have like the equipment that would allow me to record them losslessly over distance. That's like super expensive, and only like hardcore audio engineers have that. So they record on their own setups and then send that to me later. What I do though is I record myself, as you heard in the talk. I record what I say because I use that as notes. Because sometimes when I'm listening to the audio that I get from the talent, I'll notice like there's a pattern of strange takes, and I'll go like, what was I thinking when I asked for this read? And then I listen to my own recording. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Good idea, me. I'm glad I asked for that take. Nice job, past me. So that's how that goes, I suppose. I hope that answered that question.
Cool. All right. If there are not that many questions, then we can have the next speaker, Anthony, just get up on deck.
All right.
Yes.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for that awesome talk, and everybody that's come before has been so great. All right, let me share my screen. Where? I think this one.